Hello, this is the Auburn Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. Feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out to me. Best way to do this is through email and YouTube on comments on YouTube. I greatly appreciate all of you, and word of mouth is significant. So, spread the word, to your friends, loved ones. If you ever heard of a show called The Auburn Light, all you gotta do is type it in. That's me. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm on various platforms, so when they're typing it in, it won't be hard to find. All right, so on to the topic of choice. Now I'm getting in, and like I said, this is a series. So this time I'm going to focus in on to another variation about the aspects of how advertisement in itself shapes culture. Now this time I'm going to go back and I'm going to focus in on the 1980s with Benetton. I believe that's the pronunciation of the company. Now Benetton is a really good example of the aspects of how social awareness, when you attach that onto the brand and onto the image, how that cultivates a culture within itself. All right, here we go. All right, so Benetton. I found out about it, interesting enough, back when VH1 was still pretty decent, and it was back when VH1 was pretty much in the aspects and with doing a variety of content when it comes to reality shows. And so specifically, which is relevant to the point here, it was one series at Isle of the 80s or so. And so it was sort of, I guess, artists, actors, and some reflecting about the times of the 80s. And so they mentioned Benetton. And it was the whole thing, it gets very comedic oriented, the show. And so they talked. That's how I found out. And then I found out even more interesting enough, again, about this clothing line when I started college. And so it's interesting because when I as I mentioned in other podcasts, my radio show, I don't, like I say, I see my podcast as a radio show. So, there's that. So anyway, and once in community college, and then again when I went to, now it's HCU, which Houston Christian University. It used to be HBU, Houston Baptist, but for whatever reason they decided to change it. This whole thing where, being distinct to Christianity instead of Baptist or something. So I was introduced to it twice. Now, see, here's the thing with this aspects of it's quite interesting enough that, being introduced to this again, the Benetton, and specifically the campaign slogan of the United Benetton of Colors, that. It's very telling because it is really well endowed, or better word choice here. It's really transparent in the aspects of what controversy can do with with cultivating culture. And so Benetton is an example of that. So Benetton, it started out with, well, the business owners and everything, they're all from what I found out, from Italy. And Italy, certain parts of Italy, when you think about the Milans and everything, but essentially the historical aspects of Italy is the merchant part of being really understanding of how textile works and everything else, with really getting that niche out, because it was it's a strong foundation in that. And so the founders of Benetton, that's what their tradition is. They're Italian and all of this, and there was this whole thing where and you can see the succinct difference between Benetton and what I said last week with Abercrombie and Fitch. And so where they got the difference with the employees and the rapport is not the same as far as work ethic and work environment is just not the same. It's like a night and day, not apples and oranges, night and day. It's overall respect. But again, they were part of the evolution in which we see today, with the aspects of social, political commentary of the world around them, and using their means or their business to address this. And so delving back into seeing this again, here are the comments that I have, from my point of view about it, and then initially when I resaw it again when in my college years. So that is the issues, a lot of times where we go when we think about college. So college is supposed to be, in essence, a place where it's either one or two things. This is how you should see it. Going in. Is it for you, or is college for you, or is what you want to do as far as your career goals? And keep in mind, is that the place to set you up? And see, that's where a lot of things went wrong with the aspects of how, college was presented to my generation. It was, go here, go college, because that was supposed to be the only means in which success will prevail. But in reality, the situation is, what are you apt to wanting to do for the rest of your life? You got to figure that out. What do you really find value and skill in? And that doesn't necessarily mean college is the end result. I mean, there's a lot of trade schools getting certified. Certification is, I would say, is the foremarker of, foolproofing your career. Nothing is foolproof, but that can really help. But anyway, getting back to the point here. You know how those who have been to college, you know how you have introductory classes. And one of them is sociology, right? And so the teacher, or adjunct professor, in many cases in college, she wanted us to analyze and write sort of like a photo essay, I guess you can say, about Benetton and the campaign at the United Benetton of Colors. And so, when even though you're giving instructions, keep in mind that when that you can see how there's a difference in when I guess you can say kids versus adults, the difference between where it goes wrong with setting up, when you're like 17 and 18 and transitioning and you're supposed to be in your adulthood, still obtaining you and saying that you're a kid, because the way in which you see and address things is a lot different, because the way in which both of these professors were, which I appreciated to their greater extent, they were showcasing and wanting to see how we would approach the assignment. But also at the same time, it's quite interesting how you can see how the aspects of indoctrination with certain with being politically correct here can trace itself into other means, right? But it was just in these cases, all the professors were trying to do is get us to see that persuasion and image quality really means something when it comes to advertisement. And then advertising, getting us to understand that advertisement is really the powerful when it comes to that. Now, what are my extended thoughts onto it? See, I think that using it's pseudo health. It's like a pseudo effect, where if you really feel that way or something, just get out and do something about it. And that shouldn't be easier said than done. There's little things that can be done if it's beyond your means to start out, doing something simple as the golden rule. The aspects of this is found in the Christian faith with, treat others as you would be treated, and, be kind to your neighbors. And that's the problem a lot of times with today. A lot of people don't know their neighbors because of there's no real connection. And so, it used to be a time where that wasn't hard to do and all these things. Start out like that, and then, you have more means, which this company has more means, get into causes, really be out there, be out in the community and help build. But when you, use images to make very, controversial statements, there's a whole nother, what I say about pseudo care. And see, that was part of the issue that was going on, which, you give credit to where it's due with what U2, Bono, and all of them have contributed to the musical world. But at the same time, it's really telling with the aspects of say we care. But at the bottom line, do you really, when it comes to the aspects of what they're giving back to the contribution, the causes with the Red campaign, that was, really unfortunate, the reality situation of where does care lie? And so, also at the same time, I see it as these aspects of, you know, unfortunate showing yourself where you're being your ignorance too with the aspects. And, I'm just being quite candid about it, where on certain parts it's just, but other parts it was quite interesting. And it's also telling to the the aspects in the culture in which the 80s was going through, and I'll delve in deeper about that. All right, so hold on, I'll be right back. All right, so for instance, okay, so this whole thing with and I'll link all of the information for you to see for yourself, the facts, the written information and the visuals and everything. Now, Benetton is not the same anymore. They're more subdued. It's just they're not in being controversy anymore. And so there's specific images that are supposed to be, hey, look, we are presenting the aspects of diversity, black, white, which is cute. I guess it still is a little bit. Some of them are really cute where they're all wearing colorful clothing and it's plaid and it's all different. Young, vibrant, attractive. It's very cute. It's very 80s. It's very, youth happy, all so forth, creating an image of that. That's cute. But there's one specific image where it's like, yeah, okay. And then they went on and extended out, and they went into they stopped in the early 2000s. So going back to this one specific image. Now, with African American culture, particularly with slavery, this is how I see it and it's how I view it. Now, it was terrible that this happened, but keep in mind it happened. It's not still currently going on. And so when you hear all these things, call themselves being for the cause for blacks and everything, or somebody speaking for you, which is weird. It's just like, we're all individuals. We speak for if you should obtain to speak for your own self. And so when somebody gets in the business of saying, oh, well, I'm doing this for you, are you? All right, that's really self-righteous, So anyhow, I see it as, look at the progression of that. It ended. And look at the strives that happened because of it. It ending, not perpetually saying, oh, we're going to stay in a state of enslavement, which does still go on today in certain parts of Africa, in certain parts of the Middle East, and so forth. And also with the aspects of modern reality situation of sex trafficking and all these kind of things that happen, that is a real means that does go on. Unfortunately, that is leaked into American society. And, that's something to be said about that, too. But to dwell on it and say, oh, this is something that is really, this is how it looks from my point of view. Now, it is notable, and it has been said, this whole term of bed wench. So what that means is for those who don't know what that means, I will explain it. Bad wench, I typically don't get into the formality of over-explaining, but in this case, it's relevant because not everybody would know about this, or you might know it in jest. It just makes common sense to say. Go and be detailed about it. Okay, so bad wench, for the most part, from what I understand and what it's presented and what it said, is that this is a slavery connotation in which a wet nurse, right? But the difference is, she being a wet nurse is, that's what you do out of help and care for a woman who cannot produce enough milk. And though that you choose to want to do that, but when you have it to where it's presented as a slave doing this for a white person, that's a whole different connotation of saying she's forced into doing something that is, a nourishing act. And for the most part, that's perpetuating an image and saying that they could not be intentionally doing this, but that's how it comes across. That they're saying that, well, black women, for the most part, are set up with this ingrained history that they're not as apt, or they're not as adequate. That's really telling. That's one. Okay. And see, that's why I'm saying it's really something how advertising and brands really cultivate a culture. Because out of that, people start to feel a certain way. Whether it's intentional or not intentional, it happens. And so Benetton and this campaign opened up the doors for this aspects of the other companies wanting to get in line with the aspects of saying, oh, we want to be, politically inclined with causes. Okay, where I remember Levi, when I was in middle school or something, they did this, and they do it now with, recent cases with, what's his name? Hayden Smith or something. When their clothing is, sustainable from the earth, and you got to be for the cause. If you really care about the earth, you got to know where your clothing is coming from. And so, if you don't know where your clothing is coming from, if you are okay with they're softly suggesting that, if you're okay with not having your clothes sourced, naturally, then that's some sort of a problem. But for the most part, that again is cultivating a culture, because that opens the doors for people to become self-righteous and to say, to say and to, condone for people to say, well, I am not, just like with this whole, righteous, self-righteous thing with being vegan, and this whole self-righteous thing with being vegetarian. Now, if, I see it as one of the same things of cultivating, using images, or in this other case, using food to cultivate a culture. Because when I had thyroid really, a lot of issues with my thyroid early on, and this was bad that I had to, endure it so early. I was about 19 or so, when I was dealing with it. And so I was trying to figure out different means of the aspects of how to naturally help it. And so I figured out, and I found out that, well, if I eat more super foods or this, that, and the other, and mix all that in with everything, then that would be helpful. Mommy. Oh, hold on, I'll be right back. And so, as I said, it was just merely just so I can feel better. It wasn't this whole thing of saying, well, you're wrong if you don't eat this way, or meat is murder kind of stuff. That's a far difference into, somebody just eating just for their health, and that's it, and then just going about their daily lives. Now, that's segue that into Benetton, where it's one thing, and it's really, at the point, and it really tests the water if the whole adage of this controversy, does that really help with sales? What does that, or are you just doing this? Are you doing that for the cause? Are you doing that just because controversy helps with your clothing line, making profits, or so forth, being the talk of the town? Is that your real interest? Or do you actually care about these issues? And see, that's also with very telling with the aspects of the time too, of how, particularly with fashion, can be historical marks of the things that are very relevant in its time. So when the 1980s was going on, the aspects of AIDS and HIV was very prevalent. Okay, and I'm not talking about this stuff just because it's this whole you all know what my platform stands for, but I'm just putting it out there. This has to do with the commentary of the situation of what I'm talking about with Benetton, proprietary. These ads coming out in the 80s and just extending out far about it. So my point is that doesn't have nothing to do with gay pride or whatever. It's just, I'm just stating the facts, and it's just so happened to turn out that way. All right, so in the 1980s, the AIDS crisis was prevalent, and the aspects of that, it was rampant too. And there are a lot of, now this sort of came out after, like later in the later part of in the 1980s, like 1989, the ad campaign. But it was whole aspects of playing upon the controversy of the fear mongering of this whole thing. If somebody bleeds or you touch somebody the HIV or something, you might get infected, and all these things of not understanding and all this stuff. And Benetton had, if I'm not mistaken, they had images about stuff like that. And this whole image about, it was just very strange, images about black and white and all this. Hey, but y'all have to stop coming up here, okay? You have to. Hold on. I think I'm still recording. All right, so getting back to it. So, as I said, focus on black and white, black and white, black and white. But getting back, it was very apparent, that was a lot of the running themes here where, what's the outlier of something, or like the difference of something, to make social commentary. So they ran ads, in the most part, addressing these issues, and with HIV, AIDS, and so forth, and being controversial with it too, with the aspects of showing body parts, and and then also with the aspects of and doing that part to be socially, psychologically self-aware of addressing these issues with these images. And also, it's very interesting enough, and I will add that into the facts here with Fauci. Now, it turns out Fauci was at the forefront with the aspects of this, with it being mishandled, with the aspects of addressing and taking care of the issues of, HIV and AIDS, and the way it looks. And see, you can say that maybe him being a part of it helped with the spreading of it, of being why it became such an epidemic, because he in himself being incompetent, either he's incompetent or he just flat out cares less, and it's all about the profit. And that's very interesting enough with the aspects and what we see with COVID. When the COVID crisis was going on, a lot of people were putting at first when it came out, which unfortunately, I think that Trump, rushed it a little bit too fast. But it's one of those things where being in a situation, a high pressure situation, trying to figure out something to help, but making a bad decision. But it's quite interesting with the aftermath of that Fauci was, blatantly disregarding drugs, medicine that will help, and has been proven instead of using a new vaccine. And it's quite interesting when Trump, realized and said, well, maybe we should take a step back, and it was found out. And then when Trump was saying, well, let's use it, it's so wrong. It's Biden was saying it, stuff like that. We should look at it, and it should take time. Research takes time. Make sure it's right. Say But as soon as Trump says stuff, oh, trust the science, and oh, you know how it just changed where, oh, you don't care about the health of others if you don't take this shot. So pick a lane, you know. And it's quite interesting how Fauci was in the center of that again. That's very telling. So, with all this said and done, with my final points here, I think that when we look at brands and we look at how they are implemented into our culture, they really speak a lot in which values, where assorted values are in our culture. And brands like Benetton really say a lot about that. And also, it was really interesting too when it stopped, because the Benetton they did these ad campaigns saying, you know, about politicians making very controversial imageries about politicians being, you know, assorted, with it being, you know, in quote unquote in bed together, with the aspects of, you know, they really you know, self politics can be self-serving and all these kind of things. And also with the aspects of, you know, when we get into the 90s and so forth, Desert Storm was very prevalent. And then, you know, they were making commentaries about Desert Storm and all these kind of things. And it's just like, hey, you know, it ran its course, and it's just like, hey, let's just stop it, you know. And it's quite interesting, you know, making that move and just transitioning themselves out of that. Let's move on towards saying that controversy, not using controversy in order to showcase our products, which is also telling with the aspects of what was the true motivation for them to do this to start out with. You know, where they is, you know, that's very telling, because that's the aspects of, again, with the aspects using the whole adage, controversy and sex sells, in order to make a name for the product or making a name for yourself and so forth. There's something to be said about that. All right, so this reaches the end, and I would greatly like to know what you all think. Feel free to reach out to me, and the best way to do that is through email and YouTube. Thank you so much. This is the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care out there. Bye-bye for now.